Say hello to my little friend. Whoa. It is I, Sir Lacrosse, and in this video we are going to look at the orcs, how I would implement orcs for Stellaris. That is, of course, not Dungeons and Dragons orcs, or Warhammer Fantasy orcs, or Lord of the Rings orcs, all with orcs with the C. No, we are talking Warhammer 40,000 orcs. Orcs with a K. So this is the initial build recipe for the orcs in Stellaris. This is going to be a kind of standard orc, a stereotypical orc faction. I have, in other videos, we will have a freebooters orc faction, which is actually a mega corporation. And also, we will have a Rebel Grots faction somewhere. Where is the Rebel Grots? Oh, I can't find the Rebel Grots. But that will be another video as well, probably. Because this is part of a series. This is the very first in a series of Stellaris builds. Epic Stellaris builds for Empire builds for Stellaris. A lot of them will be Warhammer 40,000 builds, because I like Warhammer 40,000, and there's definitely a lot of fun to be had implementing Warhammer 40,000 factions into Stellaris. And actually on my blog you can get a little bit of a heads up on what's coming down the pipe, and I'll leave a link in the description if you want to see that, because I have let me just pop in there quickly. I was planning on showing you this. So yes, I've got a Stellaris section in my blog, so you can check that out for lots of nice articles, and a little bit of heads up as well for all the Stellaris builds that are yet to come. Loads and loads of them, and whatnot. So do check that out. The link will be in the description. But that's not what we're doing today. Today we're going to look at the video of how to do orcs, and I'll even look at a little bit of gameplay a bit later. So the first thing we need to address is, what is an orc in Stellaris? Physically, what are their species traits? So I've gone for resilient, strong, adaptive and unruly. And again, that's not about being effective, this is about being thematic. And I don't think anyone who knows orcs would disagree with any of those. That's definitely standard orcs. They are adaptive. They are very tough, so they can live in lots of different environments. And of course, they're strong, and that makes their army damage pretty good. And also resilient affects their defense damage. I guess that one's optional, because generally orcs are attacking, not defending. But it is a bonus to armies, and I think orcs are all about the armies. So, and the final thing, unruly, just you have to have a negative, and that seems sort of fitting. And it is also quite effective for orcs, because as we will see later, they will have the syncretic evolution origin. So the fact that this unruly trait applies to them actually is not so bad, because it won't be driving empire size up from pops very much, because through the course of the gameplay we will actually have quite a small portion of the population will be orcs. And actually unruly is not really that bad a trait anyway. It's probably a bit, let's say, overcosted, let's put it that way. Anyway, the other thing is, since we're talking about traits, is to note that orcs aren't a species on their own. They're kind of a caste species. In a way, a bit like ants. You know how ants have got soldier castes, and they've got worker castes, and they've got queen castes and things like this. They're not. People say they're like fungus. They are like, supposedly in law, like fungus, but they have quite a strong caste society as well. So we're going to use syncretic evolution origin to give them an extra species, an underclass of species. And these will be the Grots, of course. Now, if you know the lore, Grots are not orcs. They are sort of related to them in a way, but they have a more supporting role in the ecology. Orcs are for fighting and leading, and Grots are more for the doing the jobs, the work. They build things, they clean things, they look after the animals, and things like this. And also, they're sometimes a food source. So they have the servile trait. In this is a mandatory trait with the syncretic evolution origin, and that's going to give us a little bonus to happiness, which might sound odd because Grots are not obviously happy creatures, but it is sort of appropriate because Grots, although they're not exactly happy, they have very low expectations. So it's very hard to disappoint a Grot. He expects to get kicked. He expects to get punched and starved and everything else and eaten even. So he goes through life really sort of happy in a way when any of those things don't happen. You know, he's very easy to please in that sense. So serviles is fine, and also it gives a bonus to jobs, so that's not too bad. That's gonna make him a little bit more profitable, shall we say? But they can't be leaders, and they can't be employed in ruler or specialist jobs, which is fine because they won't. That's not what they're for. So the next thing is weak. Now you might say you don't want to do that because if they're doing the worker jobs, you want them to be strong or to be able to be effective in those roles. You can do that, but my idea is to be thematic. And so this is to represent what Grots are, not necessarily to make them optimal in terms of game prowess. And Grots are weak, that's just the thing. So it does make them slightly less effective. But a minus 2.5% to resource output is pretty small, so you're not really going to notice that. And of course, they have serviles, which gives them plus 10%, so it kind of balances out. And also, if they're chattel slavery, they'll get chattel slavery get another 10%, I think. So that's really irrelevant, actually. And we won't be using them as army, so it doesn't matter about the army damage as well, because orcs will be doing that. And so for their two strong traits, we've got rapid breeders, and that's going to help us make sure we've got more Grots than we have orcs, because they are very much the orcs are very much the tip of the spear when it comes to the orc species, right? So there's usually for every orc, there's usually like a dozen Grots somewhere out there doing something. So, and also the next strong trait they have is habitability, and that goes alongside the orc trait, who also have that. And finally, to balance out their positives, we got repugnant. Again, this is more thematic. You might think that's another bad thing to have for a servant species, because that means they're, for example, clerks won't be as efficient at producing amenities. Well, as I will show a bit later, we aren't actually going to be using the Grots to create amenities. They're just going to be doing worker jobs. And ideally, we don't want them being traders. Sorry, not traders. Ideally, we don't want them being clerks at all. Just they want to be growing food, mining, and producing energy. That's basically what we want them doing. We're going to get our amenities from the orcs, actually, and I will get back to that in a moment. But for now, this is going to should be quite cheap for us because, as I say, they won't be doing clerk jobs. And actually, most amenities aren't produced by worker tier jobs. They're actually produced by specialists, for example, like priests and entertainers. And those jobs will have to be done by orcs. So, because our underclass species, the Grots, cannot do those jobs. So it's not that bad that they're repugnant. And if you want to do something a little different, the obvious thing to give a syncretic evolution slave race is a negative to do with leaders, because they can't be leaders. So it's free negative. So the fleeting lifespan is absolutely appropriate because I don't expect Grots do live very long. and they can't be leaders anyway. So in fact, if you're really gaming it, probably let's get rid of weak, and we'll have fleeting instead. Actually, I'm even going to save that because I think that's probably better actually. Because thinking about it, you know, are they really that weak? Because they might be small, but they probably got quite a wiry strength actually. So maybe we'll get rid of weak and we'll put it to fleeting instead, which is much more effective for our playing. Yes. So we've done that. So that's the syncretic species, the Grots and the Orks. And so species traits is covered. Origin is now covered. What we're going to talk about now, we're going to talk about civics. What are the civics? And the Orc civics are really quite some nice choices for orcs. And the first one is warrior culture. And they probably, like the Stellaris designers, were probably thinking of the Klingons. I suspect it was the Klingons that inspired warrior culture. But it actually works for orcs really well as well. And so what warrior culture does, it replaces entertainer jobs with duelist jobs, and duelists turn alloys into unity, amenities, and naval capacity, which is kind of epic. So they kind of do some soldier jobs and like entertainer jobs all in one, basically. And this trait also gives us bonus to army damage and war exhaustion gain and so on. So, and the council position is a bonus to duelists, as you might expect. So this is quite a nice one, and it works fine. And that's, of course, where we're going to try to get our amenities from, as well as politicians and whatnot. So the other trait is scavengers. And of course, this is a very orky trait, because, of course, what do orcs do? Well, they file a big old... They smash up a world, create a load of scrap, and then they steal all the scrap, and then they build war machines out of it. So they're all about recycling. They are absolutely the... They're not just green in skin, they're also green in their morals. They're all about recycling. So the scavenger trait does some fun things. It allows us to get both research and resource costs from researching debris fields. And also we can salvage whole ships out of debris. We get a discount on alloys for our ships upkeep, and also some building and district refund, which is actually quite handy because a lot of the time when you're playing aggressively and conquering a lot, you will have to your conquered worlds will have building mix and district mix, which is maybe not, you won't want exactly, so you'll want to knock things down and rebuild them. So that refund is probably quite helpful for an aggressive conquering playstyle. And of course, to no someone's surprise, the ethics we are going for: xenophobe and fanatic militarist. And of course, most factions in the Warhammer 40,000 probably are going to be some measure of xenophobe and militarist, because that's just the nature of that universe. I'm sorry. But orcs definitely epitomise both, I think, to a large extent, especially the militarists, because they are all about fighting. They are all about fighting. And the xenophobe is mild here because, of course, well, we can't have fanatic both, but I think they're more about the fighting than they are about just hating people. In fact, they don't even really hate so much as just enjoy fighting and don't care about doing bad things to people they conquer. So xenophobe allows us to purge aliens, enslave aliens, and some other things which you already know probably. Fanatic militarist, of course, is just appropriate, but it does help us fighting, of course. Bonus to ship fire rate, for example. A final thing to mention actually is their government type. And purely for thematic reasons, I think martial dictatorship or dictatorship is absolutely appropriate. Orcs don't have definitely have a monarchical system. It's one big leader, but it's not hereditary. You know, it's not. So it's not imperial. The imperial government type does not. It's not appropriate. But dictatorship, that does make sense because, of course, orcs are ruled by the biggest and the baddest war boss, and only for as long as he keeps winning. And as soon as he stops winning, then they get rid of him. So this is the initial build we start with. I'm going to go load back into the game. This is the trial game. I only got maybe 60 years in. And we're going to have a look at what orcs play like. Now, I have to say, of course, I did my patented rapid early conquest strategy, which you can look in this video here, linked to above. And that allows us to get an early conquest real quick, which of course is what the orcs love to do. So rapid early conquest is the go-to early game strategy. My first conquest was the squats, or Leagues of Votan as they're called now, as it happens. And so we've got them all enslaved. As you can see, we've got... Well, wait, what am I doing? Oh, there we go. So that's our little enslaved pops. They are squats, this one. So of course, you may notice that squats are also from the Warhammer 40,000 universe. This game I have made all of the aliens factions, all the factions that appear as AI aliens, as one of my Warhammer 40,000 builds for Stellaris. So it's going to be very much a Warhammer universe. We've got Tyranids down here, you can see, in the bottom left. And I have actually taken a chunk of them already. And we also, up here, we've got the Grotes. I've already conquered their homeworld. But there are Peck, that's their homeworld. So we've conquered some of the Grotes worlds, but there's still these ones up here which I haven't got yet. And we've also over here got another one which I haven't discovered yet. And what's down here? So we've got Farsight Enclaves, Harlequins, and way down here Nurgle's Rot. So it's quite early in the game. Not many factions have been revealed, but most of them should be Warhammer factions. Conquer, enslave, that's what we do. And oh yes, so there's something here I'm gonna say. So when it comes to, you know, the little when it comes to the alien animals like the amoebas and the crystal creatures and the drones, we want to go with the hunter option, where we get a bonus to damage to them and also a bonus from harvesting their fleets, which is like food for void worms and energy for amoebas and minerals for crystals. And this isn't just because that plays well with a warlike aggressive play, but also because actually that gives us another opportunity to use scavengers. Because every time we kill these little monsters flying about space, we get a debris field again. So we always want to be fighting, pretty much. And scavengers is going to help us, you know, win the war of attrition, really. So so we got bonuses to war exhaustion from warrior culture, and scavengers, which is going to help us with the materiel of fighting, the economic side of fighting, having enough alloys and enough ships. And so for the third Civic, when we get to that point, I would probably suggest nationalistic zeal is the way to go. And that would represent the war energy, you know, the war energy. When orcs start winning, they start winning hard. Then they get this kind of enthusiasm called the war energy, which just gives them that much more oomph to their fighting. And I think the nationalistic zeal Civic is the closest thing to represent that. And I don't know what else you might want to do if you wanted to do something different, but I could suggest maybe Heroic Past. You could imagine after when they're ready to take their third Civic, they're starting to remember their early Krork nature. If you know the deep lore of the Orcs, their current form in the 40,000 millennium is a little bit degraded, and they had an earlier form which was much bigger and more intelligent, called the Krork. And if they can just keep fighting and winning, eventually they might recover their earlier Krork nature. So that's a thing. Heroic past is possibly thematic, but I think you can't really go wrong with nationalistic zeal. I think that's definitely an Orky trait. So, what else can we say? It's pretty straightforward as far as just fighting and conquering. So, traditions. Obviously, with the rapid early conquest strategy, if you know that, if you've seen that video, you know supremacy is the way to go for your first tradition. And that definitely suits the Orcs as well, so we would definitely go this way. Enmity, I would look at that because, being fanatically militarist and also xenophobic, you're not going to have any friends in the Warhammer universe, not really. So you're going to be fighting, and you're going to be fighting, you're going to have lots of enemies. You might as well have enmity, and that's going to help you if you ever found yourself a bit outclassed in a fight. Because most of what enmity does is it gives you more of something the weaker you are compared to someone else. So we can obviously fight weaker opponents, but being able to fight stronger opponents is also probably more useful. So, for example, when our military is weaker than a rival, we get a reduced build cost to our fleets. So that's going to be especially useful if we get really dinged up and we have to rebuild quickly and things like this. So it probably won't come up that often, but it can do. We also get a bonus to research if we are technologically weaker, and we're investing very heavily in fighting and also trying to use slaves for research. Our research might not be that great a lot of the time compared to others. So anyway, MT is definitely a worth look, and I've gone with adaptability because although we need something economic going on, and this one is probably the most orkiest of economic traditions. So we get enhanced recycling. Obviously, as we know, the Orcs love to recycle, and after they've smashed everything up, they recycle it, don't they? And they also are really good at surviving in environments. So a bonus to habitability. Oh, I said it correctly. Habitability is obviously always welcome. And we also get survival of the fittest, which is some more fighty bonuses. And building slots is fine. Resettlement cost, reducing resettlement is very handy because we will have lots of slaves. And what are you going to do with slaves? Well, oftentimes you might need to move them around. And you will also move orcs as well. We need really able to, for the sake of stability on our on some worlds, even if the habitability is not great, we will have to move some orcs there, for example, to do enforcer jobs, because you can't have really. I mean, you can have battle thralls, I think, can do enforcer jobs, but generally you're not going to have any slaves on a slave planet to do enforcer jobs. And also duelist jobs, because it's an entertainer job, only certain classes of entertainer will do them. So so if you've got a planet you conquer, like this is a tropical world and we're adapted for deserts, so it's not a great planet for us to be on, our dudes. But we can stick some orcs in there just for those jobs, those few jobs that slaves won't do, and that's gonna, mind you, I mean, you're gonna, as a slaving empire, you're obviously gonna have problems with stability anyway. Oh, actually, I will mention, what sort of what will your council look like? So obviously we're going to expand the council, and then we are probably going to get rid of our Minister of State, because the Minister of State basically just gives you a little benefit to like diplomacy and espionage. Well, our orcs aren't really into all that rubbish. They just like fighting. So we're going to swap out pretty much everyone we can for a fighting type. So we're going to keep the Minister of Defense, obviously, because that does useful things for fighting. And we're going to have the Master Scrapper from our Civic Scavengers. And that's going to give us a little bit extra of a bonus to, a little bit extra chance to get ships when we research debris, which is not a bad thing. And though it's not high odds, 1% per level, so that's, and if he's level 4, that's only a 4% chance. but it's quite valuable when you do get it, to be fair. So there is that. And finally, we got Arbiter of Duels, and this is just makes our duelist a bit better. You know, it's not, and that's per level, so 30% better is actually quite a strong benefit, isn't it? So that's probably worth having, actually. And head of research, of course, is the standard, one of the standard council members. So I've kept him. If I got nationalistic zeal, might think about swapping this for that, although that will hurt research, of course. And I would also say you obviously want to go to supremacists. That's just pretty obvious. In terms of edicts, I'm just running fleet supremacy, and that's plenty, because when you're running, you know, we're running quite wide. It's only year 65, and I'm already at an empire size of 491. So we don't really want to rely on lots of edicts, because we just can't afford it, really. Do please like and subscribe and all that sort of thing if you'd like to see more videos like this and more Empire builds. I'm going to be doing a lot of Empire builds for Stellaris in this channel, and a lot of them will be Warhammer 40,000 builds, but not all of them. There'll be plenty of others, more even, because I've got a long list of very interesting Empire builds which I can share with you. And do drop in the comments any sort of changes you would make, or something you'd do differently perhaps, or any ideas you have about strategy or play styles, whatever you like, really. And goodbye.